Hi, this is Keith with How to Build Your Own Home, and I've always talked about how water is your enemy. Here, it's your nightmare, and so I'm here with Johnny from Build Well Homes, a fellow builder here in my local area here, and he's taken over a challenge here, a job that has a water nightmare, and I'm going to let Johnny walk you through what he's dealing with, how he's solving this problem, but I want to give you a couple of parameters. This home is on piers. I've talked about piers before. Piers are typically used when you've got soil issues that are either expandable or collapsible. But here they put the piers because it's on an expandable soil. And as a result, that soil, if it gets wet, it climbs up the piers and down. And I'm going to let Johnny explain how that's a challenge. The issue is he found on this job, and we're going to learn from this. Johnny's got some experience in the military and a lot of complex engineering issues. So he's taken this job on. It's kind of exciting to see what he's going to do to solve for this problem. So what's the problem, Johnny, here with this job?
Water. Water's a problem everywhere. Any job, it's water. Water's been a big issue of this project. So when we took over this project, we noticed that there was a lot of water coming from the hill down behind us, and it was never addressed until we got here. So this project has a spring behind it, and the spring was never taken into consideration, considering it's in clay. And what happened is, as this property was starting to get piers put into it, and the compacted ground was being pierced, water started traveling through fissures from the spring above into this property here. Now, we didn't catch it until we came into it and started doing some work in the project. We took over this. We basically went from here up, but all of this was poured here. This sits on piers, as you can see in here. So we discovered, as we started digging next to these homes, these twin homes, that water just started flowing out. There was literally pools of water in here, and when you look next door, you'll see the pool of water that comes through there right now.
So on piers, there's typically a big, huge bond beam, and then there's piers that are connected to that bond beam, but there's typically a space between 6 and 9 inches so that soil can go up and down the piers and not affect the building, correct?
Correct.
So is this affecting the building at all?
We haven't discovered that it's affecting the building, but the way the piers were poured, if you can take a look at them, they were poured incorrectly, and so we do have to do some work on that. The problem really with this particular area here was that there wasn't really enough room in between them. So we've had to go in and we've had to dig out from underneath there. You can see back down in there, there's wood down in there. And that wood is supposed to protect the space from anything coming into here. But because of the water, that's going to be done in probably 2 years. It'll be gone. And we'll start to have the soils.
Even if it's treated lumber, it's going to be gone.
It will be gone. In that kind of water, it'll be gone.
Okay. Let's walk around this side over here. He's going to explain to you what he's going to do to solve for this problem. So we're on the back of the house here, and the spring is just a few feet that way. So I'm going to have Johnny explain what he's going to do to solve for this problem. Now, keep in mind, this house is not got a typical foundation where it's hitting the soil. It's on beams. You can see down along here, it's actually an open gap. So we have beams going down about 35 feet, correct?
Yeah.
And those beams go down deep enough so all the friction on those beams is basically supporting the home. So here's where the water is coming through the home. I'm going to let Johnny explain what he's going to do to solve for this problem.
So basically the issue is that people want to try to either hold back water, and you just can't hold it back. We have to allow this water to flow. We have enough on the hillside up there where you can see that we even have tamarisk growing, which grows really in riverbeds. So what we've decided to do with this home, along with the engineers, is to create basically a river of gravel around this house, gravel and French drains. So this was all the native soil that was put back into here, as opposed to what the engineers required, which was to have pea gravel and gravel behind here, and also to be waterproof. And you can see the waterproofing needs to all be redone. Right. But we have a really tough challenge with this, is that you can see from in here the house sits on piers. So this is where we have our retaining wall, we have our garage, but the rest of this sits on those gray beams, as you were talking about right here. So in order to get in here also, we have a problem with the slope. We can't put people back here because of the danger of the rest of the soil falling through. So we actually have to get a conveyor in here to dig this out on its own. So what happened was, as we were digging the sewer line here to come by on the side of the house, now the garage floor was actually lifted 2.5 inches. We knew that. But when we dug on the side of the house here, it was just water just came flowing out. Underneath here is just a river of water. We created from around the back, you can see where we put up a retaining wall back there. We created about 3.5 feet deep. We dug 4 feet deep down there and about 3 feet wide, and filled it all with gravel to try to catch as much of the surface as we could catch. Okay. To route it around each one of the homes. So there's actually a French drain that goes around the home this way, and there's one that'll continue to go around the home this way. We're going to gravel underneath the entire garage and run French drains under the garage. So any water coming back here that flows through this, whether it's in rain, whether it's from the spring, and right now the spring is kind of down here lower, it's running a little low, but when the water table gets a little higher, when we have rains, it comes up higher and it actually goes through the wall.
Okay.
So the point we're going to do here is we're going to dig all this out with a conveyor. We will then put a French drain back into here, and we'll have to shoot gravel, pea gravel back into here. Okay. And we'll go all the way up to about how this sits right here, and then we'll have to put a vapor barrier over the top of it.
Okay.
So what that'll do is anything water that makes it through past our French drain we have up there, we'll hit this here, not go into the garage. We'll come down and go underneath the garage and go out to the sidewalk.
Are you trying to, is there a way to get, sometimes I've found some trees can suck up several hundred gallons a day in the use of water, like poplars. They live young, live fast and die young. They just soak up a lot of water. Is there a way to get foliage up there to suck up water from?
Do you know, that's a great, we hadn't even thought about that. I mean, we're going to spray the hillside with some retaining type of foliage, but we hadn't thought about trees actually. We didn't want to have to add any more water to the property at all.
Right.
So we know we're going to xeriscape this entire property, but that's something we hadn't thought about, which we will consider now. Thank you.
Yeah, we could soak up some water.
Because I know that tamarisk soaks up a lot.
Well, if you look at a lot of rivers or creeks in the area during a drought, all the poplar, they just die because they need that constant water. They will soak up as much water as you can imagine. What's the time frame on this? Is this adding a huge cost to the home?
Oh, this has added tremendous cost to the home. I mean, tremendous cost to this home. Just tearing out those garages inside of a rebuilt garage was ridiculously expensive. And you can see when you go back over and film it, when you see how wet it was in there, we have to do water all of this as we do.
Yeah.
And the problem is that all of this wasn't really discovered until this was pretty much built. And then we had to get permissions and things like that. Like we actually have to put in a retaining wall here. We're going to have to put one in to get the rest of the water around this.
But basically one of the problems is a worker or a subcontractor, someone's making a decision, so let's just do this. But there's so many variables. When it comes to water, people make huge assumptions. I'll just put the pier down and it'll just be okay. When they were actually drilling for the pier, that's when they saw the water.
Well, it's interesting because they didn't see it down here when they started drilling these here because it was so far away from the water. And as you look and see like this right here, this was really compacted dirt from centuries old. So what happens is now the water flows down through here where it's not compacted anymore. So this is what we've run into where it's all already, pre-compacted soils here. So what happened is as they started moving back, once they got into here and they started drilling down, they started discovering water just started flowing down from the hillside. And so they didn't capture it up there earlier where they should have before they started creating fissures in here. So now we have fissures all through this. That building's even worse. That building has a lot hitting in the back and coming down. And we're really confident, like once we've seen how this works, as we've created the rivers of rock that we have, we're really confident that this is going to work for this building. And it's not a matter of the building pushing up and down, to be honest with you, because we haven't really seen these grade beams moving at all.
Yeah, that 35 feet, that's a long pylon. That goes down quite a way, and that's where all the support is. It sounds weird, but that's where the engineering is. Against that pier going down 35 feet, all the support is against the side of that pier. It's not the bottom of that pier. It's against the side of that pier. You go deep enough, you're going to have all that support against the side of your pier. It's kind of like if you get in a beach and you put your foot in the sand and somebody bears you. I mean, it's just a straight thing. You can't pull it out, but all that friction against that leg is keeping it held in position.
And it allows the soils to move up and down. And that's another thing that we're pretty confident with in dealing with the engineers is that because right now our soils are pretty wet there, they've expanded as much as they're going to expand. So we're going to fill that all in with gravel and there in French drains. That way it'll allow any kind of the water just to pass through underneath the house. That's the whole goal.
How are you going to rebuild the garage floor in there?
We'll build it right on top of the concrete. Right on top of the gravel.
So we'll compact it. You compact the gravel and just pour it right on top of it.
Yeah, we'll put a vapor barrier first, then we'll pour it right on top.
Will you do any tying in with rebar on the grade beam at all?
We will do a little bit just in case we drop down a little bit if it does, but it's not going to be the major portion of holding up. We are actually, though, adding reinforcement.
You're going to add some more piers in.
Yes, we're adding more piers in here, and I can take you in there and show you why. And actually, it would be important as a home builder if you decide to take on a project like this to watch for some very important things.
Okay.
The engineering of where those pillars were to go was never done. The surveying wasn't done.
Okay.
So previously, it was just basically, just put it there and put it there. And so you can see why inside we have to, there were some mistakes.
Let's go in there real quick and look at the grade beams and also look at the piers to see the challenge of building on piers. Let's do that. Okay, we're in the garage here, and this is where the big problem's at. And if you notice all the way around here, this entire grade beam is not sitting on dirt. It's really, really deceptive. Go, what on earth is holding up this home? Well, if you notice, we've got piers going all the way down. And one of the problems that Johnny had was that they were not surveyed on site. They were just pulled with the tape. And so they're making some adjustments for that. And explain what you're going to do in here, and you're going to add some additional piers on here, how you're going to re-pour the concrete, and how you're going to secure all that.
Okay. So this previously had a concrete floor in here. And we had
8 inches thick, right?
It was 8 inch concrete floor in here that we had to come in, cut out. It was filled with road base, and the floor had actually raised 2.5, 3 inches right in the middle. We were going to just shave it down because we didn't realize what was going on under here. And as we started digging on the side of the house to put the sewer line in, water just came flowing out.
Wow.
So at that point, we knew, okay, we have a serious water problem in here, and we have to get this taken care of. And so what we did is we tore out the garage floor to start with. And you can imagine this muddy mess we had to deal with.
Yeah, we're standing in a lot of mud right now.
When you see the other side, you'll see what I mean. And we discovered that these piers were offset. So they weren't directly underneath these grade beams, which actually causes a torque and a torsion on the building itself. So the main portion of this building is held up from this area here. There's steel beams that go across there. So if you can imagine, this building and that building are being held on this grade beam right here. So now that this is off here, causing, technically most people can't see it, but it causes a torque this way. So what we have to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to put a pier next to this on this side, go down with it. There'll be a steel bracket that goes across it, and that will be jacked up and held up here. We have to do 8 of them in each one of these buildings.
Wow.
So they'll go around the perimeter, solving problems like this. So we create the torque. So there'll be 2 on this side, and there'll be 2 more on that side, and this will be saddled in between is what'll happen with it. There was
one that wasn't quite connected. I don't know if it was.
It's in the other building, actually.
How are you going to make that connection?
We're not going to. We're just going to leave it where it lies, and we're going to put another grade beam there. That's what we're going to pick up an extra couple of them there. Or sorry, not grade beam, but micropile.
And you mentioned you're going to put some additional. How are they going to drill those micropiles inside a garage without much height?
We just have to bring the machinery in. I have to actually bring steel plates in here because the machinery is going to sink down in. So we're going to have to put them on steel plates, drill down into there, and have them poured. We hired a new company to come in and take care of that for us. So.
I'm sinking in mud right now.
Yeah.
That's why I keep
another challenge is this, is that you have to follow what the engineers ask you to do. So it was very specific that there was to be no penetrations through these beams here. And as you can see, they ran conduit for electrical to go down through these. So which hurt the integrity of that beam. And now we have to put in more micropiles over there to make up for that on that.
Yeah. They should have just run that on the outside.
Which is what we did. We're running them on the outside now. We didn't even use those. We just abandoned them, and we're not gonna mess with those. So what we're going to do in here is, as we clear out from behind, like we mentioned, we're going to drop in some French drain piping underneath there. We'll actually remove that wood from behind there, and just allow everything to sit on gravel. Now this soil is already saturated, so we know it's not going to raise anymore. It may drop just a little bit as this begins to dry out.
This is all expandable right here.
It's all expandable. Yeah, this is not a collapsible soil. It's expandable soil. So we know we're expanded up as high as we can. We'll go in and we'll clear out a little bit more, give us about 6-8 inches underneath this, and then we're going to come in here with just gravel. We're going to gravel it because the point being that we want to create basically a river to let the water.
Like a home in Malibu, just on piers, the water's just going to come in and out.
Yep, that's exactly what we're going to do with it. So we'll end up going underneath here, out to the sidewalk, and then we'll run it all the way down. So we're going to create that gravel. Now, this will sit on top, the concrete slab will sit on top of gravel. So according to whatever the engineer wants, we may do a few tie-ins. So that way, if this does settle down as it dries out, there may be some gaps underneath it, but it'll still span it as concrete can span.
Okay. What's your experience going from the Army Corps of Engineers and all that and going into residential like this?
Army Corps, all right. So they're very strict on all their rules, which I like, because I know if I follow exactly what they ask me to do, which is what I'm used to doing, that everything flows pretty well. But, as a contractor, you're going to see engineers are going to make a mistake. You're going to see architects are going to make mistakes. You're going to see your subcontractors are going to make mistakes. Your subcontractors are your experts in everything that you do, and you have to really rely on them. So, like what I understood from the subcontractor who did these piers, he said, well, the previous guy just said, just put them right there, and I did. And I told him, I said, listen, you're the expert. If I ever tell you to do something that is against what you should do, just say no. Just walk off my job. Like, you have to follow what your engineers ask you to do. And you have to have the knowledge, like, somebody should have noticed what was up there with the tamarisk. Somebody should have noticed what was going on around here before this was taken on.
But so for tamarisk to grow right there, which requires a lot of water up high on a hill, wow, where's that water coming from?
Right. And that's where a good contractor, can help. So sometimes in building a home in this kind of complicated, I would suggest somebody with a lot of experience. Like that's a lot of work I did in the military. I helped solve problems. And so we would go in, we would work with the engineers, we would work with the architects and really fix some of the problems that they had. So and I love military work, to be honest with you, because you follow the rules.
You do it right or you don't do it at all.
And that was before I actually took over this project. That's when I told the owner, and I said, listen, you might want me to skimp in certain ways, but I'm not going to do it. You might expect me to do something the way someone else does it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do what the engineers say, and I'm going to work with the engineers to get it figured out. And I said, otherwise I won't do the project.
Well, it's good that you're on this job. This is a good experience with regard to riding on piers, dealing with water. Like I said, water's your enemy. You've got to solve that. Think in advance. Go on a job site, look at on a piece of land. Look at where the water is. I can't begin to tell you how many times job sites go to pot because the water was not solved right from the get-go. Wasn't planned for, wasn't thought of. I got a post by somebody about a week ago, and they said, hey, we've got a water easement from our house in our property. What should we do with the water easement? Can we stop it? And I said, no, you can't stop it.
You can't stop it.
If there's a water easement through the home now for the property, I've moved water easements. All that has to be maintained is that water has to come through the property. And this is what Johnny's solving for. He's maintaining that flow of water. Now, they tried to stop it. That's a mistake. If water is coming through your property, even if there's not an easement, a defined easement, if water is coming, you can't stop that. You've got to find a way to get it away from the home or get it away from blocking or causing damage to the home. That's basically what Johnny's doing here on the job. Hey, thanks for being on the show. Johnny, appreciate it.
Nice to meet
I'm
you.
glad he's on the job. You've always want someone on the job who's going to take it over and make sure it's done right. So this is Keith Kelch with How to Build Your Own Home.